This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Hey friends, it's time for Best of the Year so far! So I found myself in a predicament where there was just a lot of shows and movies that I wanted to talk about, but I didn't have enough time to talk about all of them, so I think I might start a podcast. Still trying to work out the logistics there, but until then, I figured it's the perfect time of year for a Best of the Year so far, aka anything that came out before July. I always guest on the Intercut podcast for these, which I'm sure I'll be doing again this year, but I thought, why not just do a little one over here as well? Now, there are a lot of shows and movies that I haven't had a chance to watch yet this year. A lot of the binging that I've done has been at film festivals, and a lot of those movies aren't out yet. I'll mention some of those at the end for things to keep an eye out on, but it just means that I've fallen behind on some of the ones that you might have expected me to see, but I did try to catch up on all the really big ones or anything that I thought I'd really enjoy. But I do think this is a pretty good list of things that I genuinely love and things that you may not have heard of that you might really enjoy as well. 2021 is not a mind-blowing year so far. There are some very big standouts that I genuinely loved, but especially in the movie world, I'm waiting for some bigger hitters to come out as the year progresses. So let's start with the movies. These aren't in any real order, so just enjoy the ride. Now, the main one that I still may make a full video about once it's available digitally is Zola.
You want to hear a story about how me and this bitch fell out? It's kind of long, but it's full of suspense.
And I want to talk about it because the story is just so completely wild. I caught this back at 2020's Sundance, and then because of COVID, it just got delayed so long. I managed to catch it again before making this video, and my thoughts pretty much aligned exactly the same as they did that time I saw it back in January of 2020. Based on the viral 148 tweet Twitter thread from 2015, Zola tells the story of an exotic dancer who goes on a trip to Florida with a girl she just met to dance at a club before the real intentions of the evening become terrifyingly obvious. Seems like the trip may have been a guise to lure Zola into a trafficking situation where she'd be away from her support network. It's wild, hilarious, dark, terrifying, and opens up a discussion on how easy it can be to wind up in trafficking situations and the different ways they all look. Taylor Page kills the titular role, and Riley Keough will have you squirming in your seat with her performance.
This bitch with a nappy ass hair was up in my face!
Word.
And when I say viral thread, I mean viral. There were Rolling Stone articles written about this, counter threads by Jessica, the girl who brought Zola to Florida, saying that she was the one being manipulated, people trying to figure out the true identity of X before finally stumbling upon some arrest records. It's a piece of history. You can even buy the story on the A24 website right now. I'm always interested in movies that cover pieces of internet history and culture, and the movie integrates the tweets themselves in an interesting way and doesn't shy away from any of the gritty details, some of which Zola has admitted are slightly exaggerated. But the whole thing plays out like a fluffy nightmare dream. Its biggest flaw is a fizzled ending, but it's definitely worth the watch, and I am shocked that they committed to the montage of Wang. Shiva baby. This is probably my favorite of the movies I saw this year, even though I saw it last year, but it came out this year, so it counts. But it's a beautifully chaotic disaster with a tender ending amongst all the anxiety. Just imagine all the stress you'd feel at a family gathering where everyone's quizzing you on your future, where your ex-girlfriend is outshining you, and then your sugar daddy shows up with his beautiful wife and baby. I'll have my full video linked down below if that sounds interesting to you, but I love this movie. Judas and the Black Messiah is based on the real story of Fred Hampton, the deputy chairman of the Black Panther Party, who was assassinated in 1969 on orders from the FBI, and all the things that contributed to that happening. And all the performances in this movie were fantastic. Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya delivered career best performances, which is impressive considering how great their careers have been. And a real highlight here was Dominique Fishback's performance as Deborah Johnson. She's really kind of the glue that holds so much of this story together. The Killing of Two Lovers. So this is a slow burn family drama that so often feels like a thriller that held my attention from beginning to end, even when it doesn't seem like much is going on. I personally felt like I wanted a little bit more from the ending, but it's a movie that's definitely gonna stay with you once you finish it. David is a father desperately trying to keep his family together during a separation where he and his wife have agreed to see other people, but he's not taking that dynamic of the relationship super well. This isn't gonna be for everyone, but the cinematography, the acting, the dynamic between the cast is all just so impeccably handled. And the way they implement the score makes it feel like there's a lot more going on than actually is, and I think it's because it's this perfect representation representation of what's happening inside David at any given moment. He's trying to hold it together when he's with his wife, trying to play the good guy dad, but inside he is literally falling apart and very angry. I don't know, I personally really liked it. I know a lot of my friends did, but again, not gonna be for everyone, but I would recommend checking it out. Plan B.
He has to go solve a problem, though.
So last year in the teen contraceptive coming of age cinematic universe, we got Unpregnant. This year, we get Plan B. Sunny's tired of being the perfect daughter and straight-laced student, so when she gets the chance to throw a party and invite her crush, she takes this as her chance to rehabilitate her image. But after an unfortunate drunken sexual encounter with someone she doesn't even like, she wakes up the next morning and notices that the condom fell off inside her. So she and her friend Lupe head off on an adventure to find Plan B, and what follows is a journey of self-discovery and friendship. It's hilarious, it's heartwarming, I really love the cast. It's a fantastic addition to a coming-of-age repertoire. A lot of the beats are gonna feel shockingly similar to Unpregnant, but they do stand separate as their own movies. I would say the comedy in this feels a lot more like Booksmart and maybe Superbad. But even through all the levity, it really just shows the struggle that young girls have to go to get certain access to medical care.
The way I killed a man, I'm gonna be pregnant in prison.
Werewolves Within. You guys know that I am a huge fan of horror comedies, or you should, and Werewolves Within is a great addition to that category. I don't think I liked it quite as much as The Wolf of Snow Hollow, but this is easily the best video game-based movie I've personally seen, I think. Probably because it feels very not video game-like at all, but I like it a lot. Forest Ranger Finn just started up his new post in Beaverfield, a small town being divided by those who want to accept a massive oil company payout for a pipeline and those who want to maintain the natural beauty this town provides. When a series of attacks start to strike, people dissolve into paranoia and self-preservation as they try to take advantage of the turmoil. Turmoil that seems to be brought on by a werewolf. It definitely steers harder into the comedy side of horror comedy, but I'm totally cool with that. You know I love my vampires, but there's been a lot of interesting werewolf stories coming out the last couple of years, and I'm a fan. The Father. Christopher Nolan is crying somewhere wishing he could fuck with time this effectively. I realized that this and Judas and the Black Messiah were up for this year's Oscars, but it only fully released this year. That's when I was able to catch it, so I'm putting it on the list. This is a terrifying drama about a man suffering from dementia. And unlike so many other movies that portray it from the perspective of the family, The Father places us firmly in Anthony's shoes. We see what he sees, we perceive how he perceives. As faces swap and settings change, we're along for the ride with him and his frustrations and confusion. It's heartbreaking and terrifying and absolutely worth all the buzz. I care a lot. Okay, so I feel like this is a really solid crime thriller, kind of vibes like last year's Bad Education, which I would also recommend checking out if you haven't already. But it's more girl boss, and I mean girl boss in the negative way that it has grown to be associated with, not in like oh, I'm looking up to you, girl boss. Rosamund Pike plays a woman who's essentially playing a guardianship scam with the courts, where she takes advantage of seniors to steal their money and isolate them from their families and friends, and one day she messes with the wrong person. Her coveted cherry, no friends, no families, no outside attachments, is not as unattached as it may have originally seemed. The whole thing descends into a disaster where both sides are terrible, but you end up rooting for the mafia. But besties, some of you are simping for her hard. And let's not do that with the elder abuser just because she has money and a hot girlfriend. Cruella. I simply do not care who judges me, but Cruella is probably the most fun I've had watching a movie this year. It's on the list. Check out my video for full details. Blast Beat. This is another one I caught back at Sundance 2020, and I just fell in love with it. I'm a huge fan of coming-of-age stories, and anything that weaves in punk and metal just ticks off more boxes for me. It stars Mateo and Moises Arias and tells the story of a family that emigrates from Colombia to America in 1999. While Carly sees this as his chance to finally pursue his dreams of working for NASA, Mateo struggles to adapt to his new life and falls into a life of deviancy. And speaking of Sundance 2020 and punk stuff, Dinner in America. I don't think it's available in North America yet. It's still doing film festival circuits, but it is available in the UK through Arrowhead Films. This is like one of the most tender, but also punk rock movies I've ever seen in my life. It starts off a little bit rough, but that was one I genuinely fell in love with last year. Again, not for everyone, but if you're into punk music, if you're into like coming of age stories and like just learning not to give a shit, I don't know, it's hard to describe something that's both so aggressive, but then just so like cute at the same time. But I really liked it. Dinner in America.
Do you think I'm weird?
Oh yeah, no, you're fucking weird.
Nobody. This is like John Wick minus the God mode. Like, he's still kicking ass and laying out groups of people solo, but he takes more hits. It also has more comedy thrown in, but overall a super solid action movie. As this man who'd walked away from that lifestyle gets thrown back in after his simmering rage of being a disappointment finally spills over, all over a kitty cat bracelet. So I basically ignored animated movies for 2 years after Into the Spider-Verse came out, and I broke it with Soul, which I personally love. So I've been trying to keep up with them a little bit more and checked out The Mitchells versus the Machines. When a family trip goes off the rails after the robots start taking over, the Mitchells may just be the world's only hope. It's such a creative movie and genuinely funny and heartwarming as they're dealing through like problems that a lot of people can definitely relate to. And the main character loves movies. It's a win. Celine Sciamma is on her Mount Rushmore of favorite directors. It's a win. So there's some other movies that I didn't get a chance to check out, like The Disciple, but for some movies to keep on the horizon that will be coming out this year or sometime early next year would be The Fallout, which tells the story of the fallout of a school shooting and how people are processing it. Heavy subject matter, but I think they handle it really well, and it felt very true to teenagers. On the Count of Three, which deals with two friends who have hit a situation where they want to kill themselves, it's shockingly funny for how dark that premise is. Some people might not like the ending, but I was really moved by the movie as a whole, and it ended up being a lot more like hopeful than I would have thought. 9 Days, I think, is finally releasing at the end of this month, and that was my favorite from last year's Sundance. I absolutely loved it. It's a very moving story about souls who are essentially being judged to be put into bodies on Earth, and it's basically Winston Duke's job to figure out which soul has the highest chance of surviving and thriving. That's a really basic overview of it, but I was super moved by that movie, so check it out if you get a chance. Then there's Ninja Baby, which is basically about somebody who gets pregnant and doesn't realize it and kind of personifies the baby as she's kind of coming to terms with what's happening. It was like shockingly funny for someone who doesn't really like pregnancy movies. And then Violet, which really does an interesting look at the personification of like mental illness and like that voice in your head and the anxiety and the self-doubt. Really interesting watch. But let's move into television. I've been trying to watch a lot more TV this year, but I've got myself a little list here. So we're gonna start off with Dickinson. So I remember I took one Sunday and just binge watched everything available for this series, and I kind of fell in love. It essentially takes the poetry of Emily Dickinson and her known history and just builds a story with it. How her life may have played out, her relationships, the dynamic of her family, her feelings towards her best friend, and I really love it. It uses a bunch of modern music and dialogue to swirl into this period piece in a super unique way. Haley Steinfeld absolutely kills the lead role. The whole thing is just an absolute delight.
Whoa, what? It's like your brain is on fire. Oh, that tracks.
Cruel Summer. So I'm actually a big fan of off-the-rails teen dramas. I will eventually make my Pretty Little Liars video, but Cruel Summer captures so much of that vibe while staying a hell of a lot more grounded. I think I'll probably still make a full video on it because after I finished it, I was debating even making this video and just making a Cruel Summer video instead, but like I had to commit. But the story's told on 3 separate timelines. Each episode is basically one day or like the span of a few days from 1993, 1994, and 1995, and just how the characters within the show change. The series focuses on Kate Wallace, a young girl who gets kidnapped and held for almost a year, and a girl named Jeanette who seemingly steps into the role that she used to occupy in the school hierarchy. I won't spoil the major conflict because it drops at the end of the first episode and you're like, whoa! But the two swirl around the repercussions that fall out from the secrets surrounding the kidnapping, and it just juggles in a lot of childhood simplicity with a loss of that innocence. I will say that the actress that played Jeanette handles the nerdy side of the character better than she does like the head bitch and what happens in 1995, but the actress who plays Kate, Olivia Holt, kills it the whole way. Also, Kevin Smith's daughter is in this, and she talks about Clerks, and they do a bunch of really cool covers of 90s songs, so it's a 10 out of 10 for me.
Wanna watch Clerks again?
Maybe later?
Time to go watch Clerks?
Invincible. Now, I was waiting for an adaptation for this for years, and thankfully it didn't disappoint. Full video available on my channel, but Invincible tells the story of Mark Grayson, a teen with superpowers coming into himself and figuring out the type of hero he wants to be while things with his famous hero father start to fall apart. I know some people are hesitant on animation, and people just really want to compare this to The Boys, but it has so much more hope and heart than The Boys, and I love The Boys, but it is more hopeful than The Boys. Just as brutal, though. WandaVision. Look, I get it. It's gonna have some Marvel tropes that people don't like, and it's not perfect, but I absolutely love this look at grief and trauma and how it physically manifests. Olsen is an absolute delight, and the world is finally appreciating Catherine Hahn. Full thoughts available in the video I'll have linked down below. The Mayor of Easttown. So this was a super solid crime drama. I feel like it gives you a lot of crumbs to piece things together, and some things maybe a little bit too simple, but overall I still really enjoyed it. I don't think it's doing anything particularly new when comparing to other crime dramas, but I easily binged this in a day, so it's definitely worth the watch if that's kind of your thing. The story focuses on Detective Mare Sheehan and picks up a year after a young girl goes missing and she hasn't been able to solve it. So another young girl turns up murdered, the community starts to doubt her skills as the investigation kicks off. And if this wasn't enough, she's working to keep her personal and family life from falling apart. Shadow and Bone. For the Crows alone, this gets on the list. Again, full video comparing the books to the show and what I liked and how well I thought they adapted it will be linked down below. But this is a YA fantasy in which something known as the Fold has existed as a looming threat, with legends of a sun summoner being able to destroy it. When Alina suddenly displays these powers outside her knowledge, she gets pulled into a web of those who wish to use her for personal gain and those that want to prevent the Fold from being destroyed. Adding the Crows in their ragtag heist story of trying to kidnap her, and you've got yourself a recipe for a good time.
One look and I can tell. Criminals.
And lastly, I have an honorable mention. I think I like the first season more than the second season, but I've never talked about it, so I want to mention Love, Victor. So I actually really love the Love, Simon movie, especially that conversation that he has with his mom where she says something like, it seemed like you were holding in a breath for so long and now you finally exhaled. That whole moment really resonated with me and hit home. It's also an instance where I feel that the movie is actually better than the book, so when they said that they were going to be adapting a television series based on it, I was down for it. It basically picks up with Victor, who goes to the same school that Simon did and then reaches out to him because he's also having conflicts with his sexuality. And honestly, while Victor is probably my least favorite character in the show, sorry bro, I overall really like it. And I do think that this season really holds up, other than Benji being way more of a dick than he logically should have been, but the final episode had me spinning. Now this is a Hulu original, but I know in Canada it's actually available on Disney+, so maybe it's available on Disney+ in the States too, I'm not sure, keep an eye out for that. Now there are a bunch of shows I haven't had a chance to watch or finish yet, but another one I enjoyed was Made for Love. It's super weird and worth checking out. I think that's on Max, so I guess HBO Max, but it's not HBO, it's just Max. And I'm still working through the second season of Feel Good, The Underground Railroad, and Sweet Tooth, which I've heard good things about all of those shows, so let me know if you've watched them and what you thought. And now a quick trip to the worst of the year so far. Now I've definitely made videos about most of the things that I watched that I found to be horrible, but we're still gonna go through like a quick little 5 here. There's also a ton of movies that I've heard were complete garbage that I didn't subject myself to, like Thunder Force and The Marksman and whatever that other Liam Neeson action movie is, because he's just been like pumping them out so steadily. But here's what I did see and didn't like. Locked Down. Didn't make a video about this one, but holy shit was it bad. Anne Hathaway, please stop making bad movies. We know you're a queen. I normally love heist movies. This just isn't much of one. Very bad time, very boring, quite unbearable. This essentially tells the story of a couple who is like feuding and then decide for some reason they're going to perform a heist on a high-end jewelry store, and then it's just bad. Chaos Walking. I'm sorry guys, this just wasn't good. So much wasted potential from the original story that we now live in a world where the production nightmare it went through is more interesting than the movie itself. Hell, Tom Holland's experience with the reshoots in the movie itself are more interesting than the movie itself. Full video is available on my channel for my thoughts, but I would just like to make note that the last 2 movies discussed were both directed by Doug Liman, so he is having a really great track record this year for making shit movies. Vanquish. Why didn't I make a video about this one? Because holy shit, it's bad. I feel like there's pieces of the plot that could have made for a really interesting movie, and then this just doesn't do it. Ruby Rose plays a former drug runner turned caretaker for a former cop who's now a dirty cop. It's a mess and a bad time with bad writing and bad acting and bad editing. It's just very bad overall. And what has to be the worst, though I think some of these other ones are probably actually worse, but this one like annoyed me the most, and I only finished it because I knew I was absolutely making a video about it, was Woman in the Window. This was just so terrible. It was a terrible movie. It was a terrible thriller. It was a terrible adaptation, terrible story execution, bad performances from world-class actors, which is always just an extra bummer, just a genuine trash dumpster fire of a movie that annoyed the hell out of me to watch. And that's why I'm listing it at number 1, because I hate being annoyed watching a movie more than anything. I can put up with a lot of stuff, but being annoyed, I have a threshold. This passed it. I don't like it. Again, full video down below where I compare the book to the movie and talk about like the production weirdness around the author of the story. So that was at least a good time. The rest, not so much. And of course, Deadly Illusions. It's like I had an aneurysm and tried to forget that this one existed. It's a Lifetime disaster masquerading as a competent thriller, which is my legitimate Rotten Tomatoes review because I am official on Rotten Tomatoes now. I get the desire for ambiguity, but at some point you need to commit to a thread. Full video down below outlining all of that insanity. But hey, I guess we're still waiting to find out what this year's 365 is gonna be, and the year is young. Oh my god, no it's not, we're halfway done. So a lot of the movies and shows we've talked about here today are available on different streaming services in different countries and in different ways, and they just might not be available where you live. But that is a problem no more with today's sponsor, ExpressVPN. By connecting to their fast and secure server locations, ExpressVPN makes your internet think you're in a different location so you can take full advantage of region-locked content. You're Canadian and notice that I Care a Lot's been pulled from Netflix? Head on over to unogs.com, look up any movie you're hoping to watch, and it'll tell you exactly which countries it's available in. So all I had to do was connect to a server in France and I was good to go. That's right, it's Amanda in Paris now. And it's not just for Netflix, I use it all the time for Prime, streaming services that aren't available where I live, and I'm currently using it with BBC iPlayer to watch Gentleman Jack. It's super fast, I never run into buffer issues, and I can use it across multiple devices with no issues. So if you want to try out ExpressVPN for yourself and find out how you can get 3 months free, head on over to expressvpn.com/Jedi or click the link in the description below. So that is gonna do it for today's video. Let me know if there's anything I missed or anything that you loved that I should check out and maybe I didn't. There's probably some movies that you love that I didn't like as much and that's why they're not here. And that's okay. We can all like different things and that's the beauty of cinema. I am trying to catch up on a lot more television shows, so like let me know what some of your favorites are. But that's gonna do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.